Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, YouTubers from all over the world. Today we're working on these masts, and using this little trick I learned from the last ship we built. Installing the bottom dead eyes that feed up to the top gallant of the mast. So my little trick, I can only use it on this first and the second crow's nest if there is dead eyes on the second one, but I can't use it down on the ship itself because it has different apparatus that holds it. But you can see we got that grating in there. So the trick I've learned, instead of trying to tie these things, this is some of the wire that came in the San Juan model. It's really fine, so it's hard to see after it's done. So I'm just trapping that dead eye in there, and after I get the other two done, I'm going to come back with this wire and twist tie it to this tail that's hanging out there. I like to try to pre-bend it so it doesn't want to come back off while we're doing the other ones. Get this to feed up through there. Get that back in position. Little pre-bend on that. And this makes it pretty easy to get these bottom dead eyes attached, ready to go for when we start doing the lanyards and the rat lines. Just grab it in the tweezers there in the holes so it doesn't fall off. Get that wire in the groove and then pull it tight. As you can see, it works pretty good. Fish this back down for the last one. I tried using some bigger wire yesterday when I was doing this other side, and actually shattered one of the dead eyes because the bigger wires put too much force on the dead eye. So you can see we got too much slack on that. So I got to try to pull this up and pull that slack out. Now we just got to twist these two together. Get that over there where it's not real visible. I gotta grab my other set of pliers here. I want that to go around the front, because if I go around the back, it's going to be really awkward in my hand. We almost want to do the knot over here somewhere near the middle. I don't want to make it real tight because I want to be able to bend up this over here on the right, keep it out of sight, and see if these toenail clippers will cut that. It's a pretty tough wire, eh? So I did go buy some new tools. There we go. Those don't get real close for cutting, but they can cut almost anything. So I got some that are a little better for getting real close, but they're wore out. So that's this one. Now we got to do the top gallant because a bunch of pulleys on it. I think I got all the pulleys on this one done. So we'll get ready for the top gallant next. Okay, we got the last of the block and tackles and pulleys installed on the top part of the mezzanine mast. So before we glue this on there, we'll test fit that rabbit in there. We got the pulley right there we missed. Lines up with them ropes on there. So when the mast is facing like that, the pulley is sticking out the back. So let's just tie that on real quick. This is 75% polyester. I'm reaching for my glue here. I'll put a little touch of super glue on that knot. So yeah, facing like that. sticking out the back. And then we got any glue here that's any good. A liberal amount, because it's going to fit pretty tight in there. Some of this is going to slip off as we go through here. See where that rabbit is. On my glue stick. So, some on that pulley there. All right, what else? Oh, this little guy goes up here. I'm looking at the print to verify the orientation of that piece, whether it should be on the front or the back. Yeah, because the way the screen is blocked off there, and it's showing it over here on this side view on the back. That little square block is sticking up in the way. So before we glue that on, let's take I almost got to put this in the vise here now. Because we want to put the whammy on that filing job there. And get a decent grip on it. That piece is not as wide as my file, so let me get a different file. So I'm looking behind me. My tray of files. This is probably just right here. I'll bump the camera while I'm filing. I want most of my pressure to go down. Almost. Okay. Now let's test fit this again. Yes. So after that dries, I'll grind off the little points sticking out, because I've got to grind off this little places sticking out on the crow's nest here. And I always wait till it dries for a day or so before I do that, because that fell down in there, and I don't know if it hit the floor or what. Oh, it's sitting there on the table. So now we got that ready. Let's get a generous amount of glue again. The big fat fingers don't work all the time, so a little bit on the back and some on the bottom. Yep, that's it. So we got the braces on here, the rope and the pulley on there. We go down through the pulleys here. I see. I see one pulley there I missed. That would be on the side of this, or wrapped around the top and tied off. So that means there's one on both sides probably. And that might be, well, if that's facing this way, sticking out, that wouldn't be that one. That's going to be this one, I think. But there are two here behind the screen, so I'm going to prep two more pulleys to tie off on the top of this main post right below that big block there, and let them stick out to the side on each side. And I think that will be it. Oh, I see another spot. There's 542. 542. The last one here. Top gallant stiffeners. 1x3 basswood. 14 millimeters long. Oh, excuse me. So we need to make, looks like there's going to be all the way around this pole. Yeah, because the number is facing the middle, and then there's one on each side, so those 1x3 basswood pieces are going to wrap all the way around the pole, similar to what we've done down here. on this pull, but this will be below. So the pulleys are easy. I just make them up with the vise. You've seen me do that before. I stick the tail in here, do a granny knot with another piece hanging out 4, 5, 6 inches long, and I use the needle to hold the block and pull that granny knot tight around the block, and then tie another knot around it. So then I have 2 tails and the block in the middle, and I just do that as many times as I need to. Whenever we put these blocks on, the ones that are tied with rope are done ahead of time with the 2 long tails, and then we use those tails to tie it off wherever it needs to be tied off at. So let me make up those stiffeners and cut and shape them, because they got a little bit of a taper to them. So we want to try to match that taper. But in the long run, we're almost done with the mizzen mast. And before we go to the other 2 masts, we got all these yard arms to make up for the mizzen mast. So once we finish these pieces here, we'll start on the yard arms. These are the last 2 blocks and pulleys. I got those stiffeners on. So you see how this is oriented, where the hole in the block is. I got the pin through the hole in the block, so I don't have to try to hold it with tweezers or something. And we want the knot that holds the block to be on the opposite end of the block than where the hole is. So a simple granny knot, one end being held by the vise. Hold your tongue just right, and because this is 75% polyester and 25% cotton, I can put the whammy on the pull without worrying about it breaking. This cotton thread that comes in the ship, we're going to use it in a lot of places, but you can't jerk on it like that hard to tie a knot. So that's will be for one side. This will be for the other. And the other good thing about doing it like this with the pin is it pre-opens that hole. So when we go to thread this hole later on, it's already been pre-opened by the pin, and that helps the threading later on. I try to do that on all the blocks. If any of the blocks in the kit look suspect like they're going to give me a hard time and the pin doesn't work, I'll take them over to the drill press and drill them out with a 0.5mm drill bit or something, just to make sure that I'm not going to fight it later on. Because once it's mounted on the ship and you go to thread ropes through those holes, it's hard enough as it is, because you're trying to hold the block with a pair of tweezers, so you can use another pair of tweezers to poke the thread through there. And a lot of times I'll put a little super glue on the end of my thread, especially if I'm going through several blocks, to make it nice and stiff so I don't have to worry about fighting it. So those two are ready. And we're going to mount them so they're sticking out on each side here. And that'll be the last two pulleys, I think. Get that over so it gives you a little better background. That white in the background helps the camera see everything better. So now I just got to thread this through. And we'll come around this other side, pull it up to the neck up there. And this is almost a place where we want to have two pair of tweezers. Yeah, one granny knot to get it to stay where I want it. And then I'm going to do a double granny knot. I go through one time, catch that tail and bring it around, go through a second time, and then pull it tight. Yeah. So now we got one block done on that side. Get a little our sewing shears here. The reason I like these sewing shears is they've got teeth just like the other ones I showed you. These got teeth on the edge, and it keeps the string from slipping. I got a lot of glue and stuff on these. I need to clean them up a little bit, but they work really good for getting a close cut. These tweezers also are great for tying knots with these ropes and stuff because of that angle that's on them. The angle really helps a lot. So I want that block right about there, and my knot's sort of in the wrong spot, so I'm moving it. Now we got to try to do that double. Try to do that double granny knot. Whatever you got to do. I had to move the camera because I couldn't cut this off with the camera in the way. So now I want to put a little dab of glue on that, on those two knots. So I'm cutting this piece of scrap because even I'm having a hard time finding the tip I want for my glue gun. That way I can get a little glue on that knot without getting glue in the hole. You don't want to get glue in the hole in that thing. So that means this one is done. Man, there's a lot of blocks in there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And I imagine out of all the masts, this will be the one with the least amount of blocks. Yeah, it's going to be a fit that we're going to have to play with down inside the ship. Yeah, I know there's a ring on both floors in there, and this is barely lining up. I'm going to have to drill it out, I bet you. It is at an angle. If you look at the deck, and the mast is leaning back a little bit, but that's what it's showing there too. It's at a little bit of an angle leaning back. Now we're close to going in the hole, but I think I'm gonna have to drill that ring out or sand off this mast a little bit. But there's one of them, minus the yard arms. Man, look how tall that thing is. Well, I got it up on this big styrofoam block, so it's still, that's almost 3 feet, 2.5 feet. So we're working on the yard arms. They really got different names for each one of them. 6, 11. Cross jack yard. I bet you this one here is different than that one. 617. Mizzen top gallant yard. So each one of them's got a different name. So anyway, we got the beginnings of the yard started with dimensions. Here again, like we did the mast, this plan shows a top view and a side view of each yard. So we got a top view and a side view of the big one, the small one and the medium one. And then we got these two here, which are mounted off the mezzanine mast perpendicular to these. And it'll hold some sails near the rear of the ship. So one of the tricks I'm using is I can put this, before I do any fabricating on the end of it, I can put this raw piece of stock cut to the right length in the drill, and then I take the drill and I run it as fast as it'll go, and I hold it against the grinding wheel while the drill is spinning it. And boy, that works really good for tapering these. So you can see each one of them's got a nice taper on it, and that was done with the drill and the grinding wheel. So now I'm just finished making up these little guys here, and they're going to mount on the yard like it shows there on the picture. And I just took some 2mm by 5mm basswood and marked the full length of it, cut it off in the little jigsaw, and then I put it in the vise and used two different size files, a wider one and a skinnier one, to file down through the middle. And after I was at the right distance there, I took the razor knife and split it in half, so you ended up with two halves coming off of one piece, and the file did the job on both of them at the same time. That worked out pretty good. So I got 6 of those made up for these 3 yards, and now we're going to glue them on. And because I don't have any other ropes on here yet other than this stiffeners, there'll be some other pulleys and ropes that get tied to it. So for now, it's not going to matter position wise where I mount them at, just as long as they're in line with each other. And the small side gets glued. It shouldn't take a whole lot, but I do want to put them in the right position based on the drawing there. And we turn this one around, get it oriented properly. And according to where that one's at, And no matter what I do, when I touch it, it moves all over the place. Trying to get it where it's in the right spot and then put some pressure on it. So there's the first two. And these two are much closer together. I think it's going to pay me to put a mark on there where the butt of them is. And then the last one here. Do the same thing, make a mark where the butt is. It look like they're all the same size, but if there's any difference, it's not worth it. Because they're already so small as it is. And after it dries good, I'll take the razor knife and clean them up a little bit. So the first thing I did this morning was find all the raw pieces of stock I needed, and then I went ahead and cut them to length and tapered them. And then I cut these little stiffener boards to length and glued them on all three of the yards. Then while that was drying, voila. While that was drying, I went ahead and just leave it alone. Don't touch it again. I went ahead and made up these two gaffs. One of them's called a gaff something, and the other one's called the mizzen. Whatever here. 626. So many different names. I'm glad I wasn't a sailor on the ship, man. You have to memorize 500 different names. 626. Mizzen gaff. The small one. And the big one is 621 spinnaker gaff or spanker. S-P-A-N-K-E-R, spanker gaff. Spanker. Spank that butt. So the gaffs were a little tricky. This is a pre-made part that comes in the kit out of pewter, and it's got a fork shape on the end of it, and it's definitely not the same thickness as the gaff is. So I went over in the little jigsaw bandsaw over there and cut in 2 openings for the arms that were on this pewter, leaving a little piece in the middle the same thickness as the opening between the arms and the fork. And then after fitting it, I cut some little pieces of basswood and little white ones there that are probably maybe a millimeter square at the most, and put them in there on top of the pewter fork leg to give it some fill around that opening. Super glued it, and then put this rope on there. I think it fell down off of that. It's so tight I'm gonna have a hard time getting it. So anyway, wrapped the rope on there to trap everything, and we did the same thing on this one. It's just at a smaller scale, and I'm gonna take the razor knife and trim these off a little bit. I'm going to let them show, but not all the way as far as they're sticking out. Probably where that black line is. I'm going to trim them off. I want to make sure it dries good first, though. And according to the drawing, it shows it's a thick rope here and some pulleys and blocks, and then it has this one, what do they call that? 628? 628 spinnaker gaff cable holes. No, 268. I like the dyslexia here. Those are 300 and 400 numbers. Got so many references I got to go back to all the time. I spend more time looking at the references than I actually do building stuff. 268. Cleat. A cleat. You see those on boat docks and on the boat itself. And we got some smaller cleats that we painted gold that are on the, they're all over the side of this anchor rope hoist. There's 3 of them back there and 3 of them out here on this side. They're little dinky ones. There's more of those left, but if this is dimension true, then I picked the big cleat because that little ones are so much smaller than that. Should be the right one. And they're all in the same pocket in the kit. So now we got these fashioned and shaped, and the main piece is glued, it's time to start putting blocks and pulleys on them. Each one of them's got a whole bunch of blocks and pulleys. I'm going to shape the end of this to match that and put a hole in the end of it, probably for some ropes. So, and then we got some beading to go on the end there for like bearings. Little black beads that are in the kit that'll act as a bearing as that thing slides up and down the mast. And I did get that mast fitted yesterday. I'm not sure where that'll go, probably right in here somewhere. But we got this fitted all the way down into the big block that's down underneath the deck there, and ended up shaping this bottom part of the shaft to fit into that block, and then making it skinny enough to fit in those rings. And I think it's at the right height. So once we get all these yard arms done, we'll work on the next mast. Lots of beads and pulleys and foot ropes. You can see up here, there's a top view and a side view, or side view and top view. But they got foot ropes on those two and a foot rope on this one. So when the sailors are working on spreading the sail or putting the sail up there, they can stand on that rope and you use the pole as a balance point on their waist. And that's what those ropes are for. They actually stand on them while they're working on the sails, getting them spread out or putting them away. So time to tie a whole bunch of blocks and pulleys. Okay. Just finished tying on the last block and tackles on that upper gaff. So you can see all the detail there as far as got some holes in the end, and one long one and two shorter ones, some on the top, some on the bottom, 2, 4, 6, 8 on the sides, an eye bolt on the end. That one took, well, it didn't take it near as long, but it did have more blocks and pulleys than any other ones. These two over here, I think this is the lower yard, in the middle and the upper for the mizzen mast. And I got them hanging there by the foot ropes upside down. So on the foot rope side there'll be a lot of pulleys on both of them. And then there's the beading to hold it around. That's like a bearing for the mast, so it can raise the sail up and down the mast. So there's beading on all of them. I didn't do the beading on this one yet. It's the only thing I haven't done. I got the beading done on this one, so you can see the details, all the different blocks and tackles. And we got all 5 of them done for the mizzen mast this week. And the mizzen mast is finished, of course. And we got it set down in its place. It's not glued in yet. And I learned from the last model, you want to sew those sails onto the yard before you mount the yard on the mast, because you don't want to try to be doing that while it's up there on the mast. It's just too much stuff in the way. So we'll do the dead eyes and the lanyards and stuff, and there's a bunch of main ties that are going perpendicular off of this mast. We'll do all them after we get all 3 masts done, and then when we get the yards with the sails on them sewed, then we'll take each yard with the sail on it and we'll mount it to the mast and do the rest of the rigging that has to do with, so you can see the rear gaff there, the upper and lower, how the sails are sewed on there. And that's why you don't want to mount all these yards to the mast until you get the sails mounted on them, because it's a lot easier to work the sails down here on the bench, get everything in the right orientation, and then just take it and tie that bead off around the mast, and then that'll be done as far as installation of the yard onto the mast. Then there's a bunch of rigging that'll go to all these blocks to operate the sail. So good progress this week. Mizzen mast rough end work for the yards is done. So next video will be on the main mast. I guess we'll do the main mast next, and we'll do the foremast last. So we'll mark all these so we don't get them mixed up with the other masts. Flip the page over and start on the other main mast and the yards for it. The rear mast has these extra 2 gaffs, so I wanted to do them first because it has more work than the main mast. Well, the main mast is going to have a lot of stuff on it, but won't be quite as bad as the rear mast was. So thanks for watching.